Hello everyone, you got Darcy Scott here. Today we're going to do a review of Close to the Edge by Yes. Now this is a great album right off the bat. If you only want 2 second review, listen to it. It's a great album. Generally though, it's considered to be one of the highlights not only for Yes's catalog, but the catalog of progressive rock. In the history of progressive rock, this is an album that's often talked about, revered. Some people think it's too dense or difficult to talk about. It's not. There's a million reviews you can go read, and they're all great that really get into it. But it's a fantastic album. Now this was released in 1972. Yes is coming off of their album Fragile that introduces what comes to be known as the signature Yes sound. Certainly, almost a lot of their biggest hits come from the album before that, the Yes album. But here we have Rick Wakeman on keys. That's a big introduction. And I find on this album it's Rick Wakeman and Steve Howe kind of working together that really drive the musical melodies forward. Now this album is 3 tracks. You have your title track, takes up all of side 1. It's 18 minutes or so. Don't have the times with me. Side 2, you have 2 equally strong tracks. You've got one that's kind of the more standard rock, but it's all great. It's all fantastic, right? So your lineup, you have Jon Anderson on vocals, who is strong. I think Fragile really pushed him forward to kind of go on with his hippy-dippy spiritual lyrics. And this continues that here in a really good way. Bill Bruford on drums. Maybe not highlighted as much as he could be or should be. It's an opinion thing. But it's great at what he does. He's amazing. Steve Howe on guitar. Here you still have that very classic Steve Howe, clean, almost like glass-like sound, but it's used in different ways, sometimes more of a neoclassical orientation or jazz or rock. It's a little more varied than on Fragile or the Yes album, or on the 2 releases, Time and a Word and Yes. You have Chris Squire on bass, who his bass work on this album is phenomenal. He's always been a great bassist, but here it really, doom, doom, it really drives forward. It's so good. And Rick Wakeman, again, like I said, I think this Chris Squire and Rick Wakeman on this album, go for it, and Steve Howe too. So your tracks, track 1, why not? Let's get into the title track. Close to the Edge. It's on my little notes that I wrote, so why don't we get into that? So, songs in 4 sections. Section 1, you open with this weird soundscape, which is something I wish Yes did more of. It works quite well. It's very effective. You have kind of synths chattering with birds, and then it crashes into this very, very jazzy, very chaotic kind of down, 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 down. It's kind of all over the place. Lots of stops and starts. It's good. And then you kind of get into the main musical melody of, ba, 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 ba. It's something that comes back in and out of the piece. It's very effective. I think Chris takes the cake on that. His bass is just great on this section. Again, I think the whole record features everyone very well, but Chris here. Part 2, the band really comes together. It's very cohesive. Lyrically, I think it's part 2 and 3 are the strongest kind of elements of this track. Jon Anderson does very well. Lyrically, Yes has always been kind of strange, but it's definitely a band where it's how the words sound when they're put together. That's kind of the key element here. Part 3, it's what contains my favorite bit. I don't know if you'd put it in part 3 or 4, but part 3 overall is a really Rick Wakeman heavy piece, and I love it. And then you get this transition from part 3 to part 4 with kind of, starts with the neoclassical organs, and then you get this great synth, it's oh man, that when that kicks in, that's how I know this song is brilliant. Part 4, it's just the perfect close. As a song, it's lengthy, well, not lengthy for a prog song. It's a good almost 20-minute mark, but it never feels bloated. It never feels like they're just trying to hit the prog rock echelon or whatever. It's just a great song that flows very cleanly, very naturally. It's just a fantastic song. It's the first that Yes did in this way. They've got lengthy songs before this, this is where you see that they can do a long song and do it very, very successfully, right? So let's flip the record over, go to the song And You and I, which is definitely where Steve Howe shines on this album. He does great work on the title track, but it's here on this one you start with this very, very delicate, very quiet acoustic guitar. And it breaks into, the song's in 3 parts. It breaks into part 1, it's kind of a folk introduction, folk orientation. Part 2 kind of musically opens up, and then part 3 you end with this very, I can only describe it as very jaunty epicness. It's happy, and then it's happy and it reaches up, and it's just happy in a progressive rock kind of way. It's amazing. It's just a very great song. Lyrically, maybe one of the better developed songs on this album. But again, not that John Anderson writes poor lyrics, but it's more how they're delivered, which is important than just reading them off the sheet or reading along with it, right? And then the third song, Siberian Kachru. I don't know what, I know what Siberia is, but I don't know what a Kachru is. Kachru. But this is the rock track. It's not the single from the album, but it's definitely the one to try and get people into it. Oh, you don't want this long song, we'll try this one instead. It's relatively simple in terms of progressive rock. It's simple in delivery, but in that way it really lets Bill Bruford do his thing. He plays a lot, lots of fills, lots of stops and starts. Just lots of great Bill Bruford moments that you didn't necessarily get on And You and I or the title track. But it's just a really good track overall. I think there's a lot of great Chris Squire on this as well. Again, if it's rock, your bass, your drums, that's what you get, right? It's awesome. It's just a very satisfying close to a very satisfying album. Again, I can't praise this album enough. It's progressive rock at its best. It doesn't feel overdone. It doesn't feel bloated. It can be difficult to get into if you're not listening to that type of music, but again, start with maybe Roundabout from Fragile, start with Starship Trooper from the Yes album. Some of the length here, but simpler in terms of composition songs. And then once you're kind of used to longer songs with different movements and returning melodies, try this album if you weren't ready for it, and I think you'll see it's just such a good album overall. Can't recommend it enough. My edition is that one there. I've also had the, I believe, 2003 Rhino remasters, and that was good. That had studio run-throughs and stuff. This one there is my most recent pickup. It's 2012, based off of the Gold SACD release. It sounds really good. I heard some complaints about just the sound quality. I think the sound quality is good. The vocals perk up really well. The bass is really noticeable. I think it kind of gets a little muddled within Close to the Edge, but that song never sounded great in terms of production to begin with across all the different versions I've heard, so I think they did a really good job on it. Again, Close to the Edge, great album. Can't recommend it enough. See you guys later.